Hey, welcome to another video. In this video, we're going to be doing the last pieces of code for the dealership level. With that, let's get into it. Hey, before we get started with the video, I ran into a problem while filming, and I just wanted to show you how to fix the problem before we get to that portion of the video so that you don't end up in the same predicament I was in. So to start off with, you need to go into the open world level and then select these spheres, and then in the details panel scroll down until you get to where it says collision presets, where it says default. You need to turn this and set it to no collision, and then do the same for the other one as well. Change it from default to no collision. The problem is that, well, the way I understand it is that because when we spawn in the car into the open world level, the spheres have their own collision and then the vehicle also has its own collision. So because we are spawning at the same location as the sphere, the two objects are colliding with each other, which causes an error. The other way you could potentially overcome this is if you open up the level blueprint, and then in the spawn actor where it says collision handling override, it's usually set at default. You can change it to always spawn with no collisions, but I think this way actually works better than having to change it in there, just in case something else might happen as a consequence of changing the spawn actor collision settings, and then just removing the collision settings on the object instead. Another thing I want to mention, just in case you might run into other problems. I don't know if it will happen for everyone, it might happen for some people. It did happen for me. But in your parent vehicle, if we go into the details panel and we scroll all the way down up until actually just look for, and if you type in AI under the pawn drop down value, there's the auto possess AI. Usually it's set to placed in world. I just set mine to disabled. That is something else I did because sometimes I don't know if it's just maybe because some of the settings adjustments that I made to my particular product settings, but sometimes it wouldn't possess the spawned in actor, and then other times it would. So how I got it to be consistent is that I just disabled the auto possess AI. So that is pretty much it, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the video. So the first place we're going to start off is the vehicle button. In here we're going to create a new function, and this function we're going to call it vehicle info, and then in the function drag off quite a bit and then look for create widget, and the widget we're looking to create is the vehicle info, and then we're going to populate the variables with the information from the blueprint structure. So drag in the as bpgi game, drag off, and then get bps vehicles, drag off from the bps vehicles, and then get a reference, drag in the vehicle index and drop that on the pin, drag off from the get, and then break, and then from the data asset we're going to drag off, and the first one I'm looking for is the get transmission, plug that into the transmission text, select the break, scroll down and then hide unconnected. The next one is the top speed, drag off and then get top speed, and then drag off the create widget node a bit, and then in a free space right click and then look for append, the one at the bottom, the string append, and then what we're going to do here is from the top speed, before we connect it to the append, we're going to drag off and then look for round, and then from the round we're going to drag that into the A, and then since I'm using the metric system, I'm going to use the kilometers an hour, so add a space and then kmh. If you're using miles, and then just put the miles per hour, and then from the append you then drag that into the top speed, and then just drag it out a bit more, and then just straighten this, and then the next one we're looking for is the price. So from the data asset again, drag off and then get price, and then connect that into the price text, and then next one is the max torque range. So we're gonna drag off and then get max torque range, take that and connect that into the max torque range, and the next one is the max torque, drag off and then get max torque, and then much like the top speed we're going to add a round, select round, control D, connect that to the max torque. From the round we're going to drag off and then connect that to the max torque, and then next one is the engine, so drag off and then get engine, and then connect that to the engine. Next one is the drivetrain, so get drivetrain, and then connect that to the drivetrain. And then the last one is the curb weight, and then get curb weight. And then we're going to do the same like we did with the top speed. We're going to take an append, connect the curb weight to the A, and then in the B, I'm going to add kgs. And then I'm going to connect that to the curb weight. And then that will do it for the function. And then we're going to compile and save, head over to the event graph, and then take the function and then drag this to the unhovered. And then we're going to connect that. And then before we move on, we're just going to go and make sure that it works. So compile, play the level, and then now it seems that I forgot to add the widget to the viewport. So from the create widget, drag off, and then we're going to promote this to a variable, and then we're going to call this as WBP vehicle info. And then after that, from the set, from the bottom bin, drag off and then add to viewport. And then we're going to compile, go test out again. And then now we have the widget, but as you can see, they are overlapping. So what we're going to do is in the event graph, we're going to go and select the vehicle button, and then on unhovered, we are then going to drag in the as vehicle info widget, and then drag off from there, and then want to say remove from parents. And we're just going to connect that, and if we compile now and play, and then as you can see, now there's no more overlap. It only displays the widget for the car, and then once we hover off of it, the widget disappears. So we now know that the widget works. So now we can move on to the next part, which is the purchasing of the vehicle. So we're going to head over to the purchase pop-up, and then the first thing we're going to do is head over to the designer, select the owned text, and then set its visibility by default to hidden. Compile, head over to the graph, and then from the event construct, just drag the event tick out the way. From the event construct, right click, and then get game instance. From return, drag off and then pass to BPGI game, connect the execution pin, and then from the SBPGI game, drag off and then promote to variable. And then the next thing we're going to do is from the no, we're going to do the no first because it has the least amount of code. On click, and then all we're going to do here from the no is just drag off and then remove from parent, drag off and then create widget, and then the widget we're creating is the dealership widget, and then from the return, drag off and then add to viewport. So that's it for the no. And then the yes, unclick, drag that down a bit, and then the first thing we're going to do is check if the vehicle has already been purchased. So the player already owns it. We're going to drag in the as BPGI game, drag off, and then get BPS vehicles, and then drag off again from the as BPGI game, and then get vehicle ID, and then from the BPS vehicles array, drag off and then get a reference, connect the vehicle ID, and then want to drag off and then break, and then we're going to expand this and look for the purchased. So from the purchased, drag off and then look for a branch, select the break again, hide unconnected, and then connect the execution pin. And then for the true, what we're going to do is we're going to take the vehicle pop-up, so drag in the vehicle pop-up, drag off and then set visibility to hidden, connect to the true, and then the next one we're going to drag in is the owned, so drag in the owned, and then this one we're going to set its visibility to visible, and then we're going to drag off and then look for a delay. We're going to set a 2-second delay, and then we're going to drag off from the owned, actually just take the visibility, Control D, connect the execution pin, and then from the owned, drag that into the target, set it back to hidden, and then the same for the purchase pop-up, take the set visibility, Control D, connect the execution pin, and then from the purchase pop-up, drag that and set that as the target, and then set this back to visible. And then that will be it for the true. So if the player already owns the vehicle, then we're gonna hide the purchase pop-up, make visible the owned text, have it be on screen for 2 seconds, and then bring back the purchase pop-up, and then set the hidden text to hidden, not the hidden text, the owned text. And then that's it for the true. And then for the false, the first thing we're going to do is see if the player has enough money. So from the break, select it and then look for the data asset. From the data asset, drag off and then get price. And then we're going to take the as BPGI game, Control D, and then from here we're going to drag off and then get money. Swap these two, and then from the money, drag off and then look for the greater than, connect the price to the bottom, and then look for a branch. From the previous branch, false, connect that to the new branch, and then if it is true, we are going to take the SPPGA game and the money, Control D, and then we're going to drag off on the money and then look for subtract, and then we're going to take the price and then connect that into the bottom, and then from the SPPGA game, drag off and then set money. From the subtract, connect that to the money, and then connect that to the true, and then we're going to drag off from the set money, drag off and then create save game object. Save game we're looking for is the BP save game. We're going to drag off and then promote to variable as BP save game, and then from the set as BP save game, drag off and then set money, and then drag the as BPGA game and the money, Control D, connect that to the set money for the save game, and then we're going to drag off from the set money, drag off and then save game to slot, drag in the as BPGA game, drop that on the save game object, then the slot we're looking for is money. And then what we're going to do is we are going to take, and the next thing we're going to do is drag in the as BPGA game, drag off, and then get BPS vehicles, and then we're going to drag off and then look for get, and then we're going to drag off from the as BPGA game, and then get vehicle ID, connect that to the get, and then from the get we're going to drag off and then set members in BPS vehicles. And then the one we're going to be looking for, just expand the default category, is the purchased, so the purchased, and then we're going to set this to true for whichever vehicle the player has purchased. And then from the set members in BPS vehicles, drag off and then create save game object. Save game is the BPS save game, drag in the as BPS save game, drop that on the return, drag off from the set, and then set BPS vehicles, and then we're going to copy the as BPGA game and the get BPS vehicles, Control D, connect that to the set, and then drag off from the set, and then save game to slot. The slot we are looking for in this case is the strut, which is specific to the BPS vehicles, and then the save game object is the BPS save game variable, and then we're going to drag in the as BPGA game, drag off, and then get BPS garage cars, drag off from the as BPGA game again, and then get BPS vehicles, and then drag off from the as BPGA game once more, and then get the vehicle ID, and then we're gonna go from the BPS garage cars, drag off and then add, and then from the as BPS vehicles, drag off and then get a reference, then the vehicle ID, connect to the get, and then from the get connect to the add, and then connect the execution pin, and then after the add, drag off and then create save game object. Save game is the BP save game, drag in the as BP save game, drop it on the return value, and then drag off and then set BP as garage cars, take the as BPGA game and the BPS garage cars, Control D, connect to the set, connect the execution pin, and then from the set, drag off and then save game to slot. And then the slot we're looking for is the owned cars, and then drag in the SPP save game, connect it to the save game object, and then the next thing we do is after the save game object, drag off and then create save game object. And again, it is the BP save game, and then drag in the as BP save game, drag and drop it, and then drag off from the set, and then look for set vehicle ID. And then how we're going to get this vehicle ID is from the add, because in here it will return the index of the newly added item. So this is how we get the actual vehicle ID that we use throughout the rest of the game. It's from the add, and then this one is the one that we're actually going to save. So connect that to the set vehicle ID. So this is how we're going to update the actual vehicle ID that we save and use to know which vehicle the player is currently using. Every time the player will purchase a vehicle, we will then take the integer value of the car that has been added to the BP garage cars, and then we will then set that as the vehicle ID so that when the player returns to the workshop after purchasing a new car, they can instantly customize it and the game will know which car it is that the player is using. And then from the set, drag off and then save game to slot, and then drag in the as BPGI, the as BP save game as the save game object, and then the slot name is the vehicle ID, and then the last save game we are going to create, drag off and then create save game object is the BP save game, drag and drop the BP save game on the return, and then we are going to drag in the as BPGI game, drag off and then get the BPS vehicles, drag off and then get a reference, and then we are going to use the temporary vehicle ID that we get from the game instance. So drag off and then get vehicle ID, connect that to the get. From the get, drag off and then break, and then from the break, expand, and the one we're looking for is the pawn. So from the set, drag off and then set vehicle pawn, take the pawn and then connect that to the set pawn, connect the execution pin, select the break, and then hide unconnected, and then drag off and then save game to slot, drag in the save game variable as the save game object, the slot name is the pawn, and then lastly drag in the as BPGI game, drag off and then set workshop, leave it as false because we're spawning in from the dealership, and then from the set, drag off and then open level by object reference, and the one we're looking for is the open world, and then that is the whole code. So to explain what the code does, at the beginning we are checking if the vehicle that the player has pressed, so on the vehicle button, the one that has been clicked, we then check if that specific vehicle is already owned by the player. If it is, we hide the pop-up, we set the owned text to visible, we leave that on screen for 2 seconds, and then hide the text and then allow the player to then select another car. But if the player doesn't already own that vehicle, first we're going to do is check if the player has enough money, if the amount of money the player has is greater than the price of the car. If that is true, then we are going to subtract the price of the car from the amount of money the player has, save that value, create a save slot, set the new value or that the player has, the amount of money the player has now after the purchase of the car, and then we are then going to look for that very same car in the BPS vehicles, set that to purchased, so that the next time the player wants to buy the same car, they won't be able to because they would already own it. And then we want to save that information for the next time, and then from there we then take the vehicle that the player just purchased, add that to the garage cars so that the player can go on to customize the car. We then save this information yet again, and then we save the vehicle ID that we're going to use throughout the rest of the game. We save that information as well, and then we save the vehicle pawn of the newly purchased car that we're going to use to spawn in the car in the open world level. And then we save that information, and then we just tell the game that we are spawning in from the dealership, and then open up the open world. So if everything is correct, we should then be able to purchase any of the cars and then spawn in to the open world level without any problems. Let's go test it out. Actually, before that, let me see if I have enough money first. Money and get like 200. That's fine. Play the level. So any one of these cars, I'll go with the LF. Select the LF. Everything else has gone. We select no. We come back here. Same with the other cars. We come back, and then we press yes. Okay, so we have some problems. Let's go see what the problems are.
One eternity later.
So now we have the vehicle spawned in. We have taken possession of the car, and we can drive it around. So now we know that the car can be purchased, and the ability to spawn the car into the open world level and take possession of it does work. So now we're going to try out the other piece of the code. So we're going to select the same car and then click yes. And as you can see, we can purchase the car for a second time, which is not right. And the reason for that is because we're not actually loading in the updated blueprint structure, which happens every time the player will then go to the main menu. But if you're playing through the game, then that shouldn't be a problem. But for the purpose of the test, we are going to go to the dealership level, and then by the sequence, we're going to select everything after it, and then just move it out of the way. And then from the game instance variable, drag off, and then we'll look for load blueprint structures. And then we're going to connect it, compile, and then play the level again. Then we're going to select the same car, and hit yes, and you can see it says owned, and then it comes back. Try it again, it says owned, and then now we're going to bring it back. And as you can see also, the back button now works. We head back, we are brought back into the open world. So we now see that the code does in effect work. And then the problem you might run into is when you purchase a second or a third car, sometimes you might see that there's an overlap between the body colors of the car. So to fix that, we are going to go to the dealership, head over to vehicle, head over to the parent vehicle, open up the blueprint, and then by the configuration, we are going to add the load vehicle ID, because anytime and every time we open up the open world level, we will be calling the configuration custom event, and then if we add the load vehicle ID on there, then we will be calling the correct vehicle ID as well along with it. This is just to ensure that there is no overlap between body color or perhaps even some of the wheels. So that's just an extra precaution. And with that, that brings us to the end of the dealership level as well as to the end of this video. And until the next one.